There we go.
Good morning. I am live this morning on my day off in Frederick County Public Schools. I love to do things on my day off. I feel like my calendar is sometimes busier on my day off than it is during the week. But I'm here with Dean, Mr. Dean Rose. He is another legacy leader. Again, this is Jeneen of Jeneen C.A.R.E.S, where we're caring, achieving, restoring, empowering, and supporting our youth for the future. I am excited to have Mr. Rose here. We've talked a little bit before our interview, and he has a lot of similar views to what I do, and I'm excited to allow him to share with you. And so, Mr. Rose, I am going to get us live, hopefully on Facebook. But while we're doing that, let's go to question number one, and just tell us a little bit about your background and experiences, and I'll mute myself so that I can allow you to be heard. Thank you again for being here today.
Thank you. Well, again, my name is Dean Rose. I'm a 22-year resident of Frederick County, moved up here with my wife, Robin, who's the Vice President of Development at Frederick Memorial Hospital. We have two children. They're grown. They both went through FCPS K through 12. But a little bit about me before Frederick is I was born and raised in southern West Virginia. Because of my dad's career, we moved around quite a bit, particularly at an early age. In the second grade, I actually went to 3 different elementary schools. So at a very early age, and this is probably good for some people, bad for others, I developed a personality in which I was pretty adaptable. I was pretty outspoken. I had a big personality. I enjoyed talking to people. And I think that was just, if you move 3 times in the second grade, you learn to make friends quickly and adapt to the environment and things like that. And it's funny too how we talk about mentors in your life and how that third move was kind of, again, third time in a school year. I'll never forget my second grade teacher's name was Ms. Heatherton, because she was so empathetic to my situation of, wow, this is your 3rd class this year. And I just remember her being such a empathetic and just a great figure in my life. And it's just so funny how I really have memories of that second grade teacher and what she did for me. I was very fortunate. I was raised in what would probably be considered a middle class family. My dad worked a lot, so he was busy. He was a very motivated achiever, and I say that a lot about that generation. That generation, we always talk about that generation was raised by the greatest generation, and the way they based their success was how they provided for their family. And my dad was kind of like that. He was a driven individual, and he worked a lot. So my mom was a stay-at-home mom, so spent a lot of time with my mom. A lot of my interests and values surround my mom, and then 4 other people that were huge in my life. So fortunate that I spent the better part of my first 25 years with all 4 of my grandparents, which really, and they were different, but had similar character traits and values. Every summer, I spent a couple of weeks with each pair of grandparents at their home, which always gave my parents a break for a couple of, almost a month by the time I spent 2 weeks at each grandparent's home. But I was so fortunate. My grandparents were just 4 of the most amazing people. Again, both my grandfathers served in World War II, so they were part of that greatest generation. Just very proud to have them having been a part of my life and who I am. And I just thank my lucky stars that I got to spend that many years with them. And then again, they started to pass away, but my mom's mom and dad lived into their late 80s, 90s. And so I had them for a significant part of my life, and just very fortunate to have them in my life, and just very lucky. But again, moving around a lot in southern West Virginia, I was exposed to a lot of different cultures. It's kind of interesting. People think of West Virginia, oh, well, it's, it's the mountains, but there is a lot of both economic, social diversity within even West Virginia. What I will say with this is interesting, is that I did not experience actually even going to school with a person of color until high school, which again kind of speaks to back in the 70s and 80s, the type of segregation that still existed in our world. But thanks to my upbringing, when I was exposed in high school to a significantly more diverse high school, it really had little to no effect on me. And I credit my parents and my grandparents for that, is that they just raised me that way, and that I was able to cross cultures. And then also I think sports has a lot to do with that. If you're involved in sports, you become teammates, you have a common goal, you have an opportunity to win and lose with people from different backgrounds and different life, and that helped form who I was. That then also in West Virginia, you get to experience not just some of the inequities that people of color face, but just poverty in itself. And there's not many places in West Virginia where you can go to school and it's purely going to be middle class, or you're always going to be in that type of diversity, where you've got successful young people's families, and then you're going to be in school with people who are worried about, we talk about the Alice report in Frederick County, the people that wonder, where will my next meal come from? How will I pay the rent? So you get faced with that, and that always interests me and a lot of my friends. They'd come to my home, I'd go to their home, and get to experience that. And again, I credit my upbringing, that my parents, I tell kids this now, my parents were big believers, and you always re-examine your circle of friends and see what it is. But you always take a look, are you pulling them up or are they pulling you down? And as long as you're always pulling people up, that's positive. But if you find someone in your circle that's looking to pull you down, you probably need to re-examine your circle. So again, I continued growing up in West Virginia. Very southern West Virginia is where I graduated from high school, a place called Bluefield, West Virginia, which actually sits right on the West Virginia border. You can be in Tennessee, North Carolina, obviously right in Virginia in 2 minutes. But so that's where the kind of interesting accent that I haven't even been able to kick for 22 years still comes from. Then I went to Marshall University, and this is where my life begins, where I have to help my own children and children that I work with that do as I say, not as I did. Learn from my experiences. And I hate to look back and be critical, but the educational system in which I was brought up in southern West Virginia was not the greatest. You just weren't academically pushed. And I like to think of myself as I'm a relatively smart person. And frankly, I breezed through high school. I never cracked a book. I had some really strong interest. I find this curious that you have such advanced degrees in the science field, and that was my passion at the time. For me, I felt since as long as I can remember, since kindergarten. I was probably the kid at kindergarten graduation when they did the little graduation. They said, when Dean grows up, he wants to be a doctor. And that never changed. I always wanted to be a doctor. But the problem is the educational system that I was in never pushed me to be better, to expand my mind, to develop the study habits and the commitment that was necessary to reach that goal. It's one thing to have a goal, but you better have a vision of how to reach it. So I got to college with no study skills and very little background, but I thought, wow, I blew away the SAT and the ACT in the science category. I've got it made. So I always tell, this is a quick story. I walked into my first chemistry class, who was taught by the dean of the College of Science, and he happened to also be my advisor. And I tout him as a, thank goodness for him, Dr. Dean Hanrahan got me through college. But anyway, we stepped up. We had a book about 500 pages thick. And to start class, he said, everyone turn to page 222. And we all turned to page 222, and he began lecturing. And from minute one, I was lost. And I'll never forget, I went to him after class in his office hours, and I said, Dr. Hanrahan, what about the first 222 pages? He said, Mr. Rose, you should have learned those in high school. So I had a lot of catching up to do. And frankly, I wasn't prepared. So I had a really rough first semester, like a lot of freshmen, unfortunately. You know, we talk about the 25% of college freshmen don't even come back for their sophomore year. That's a problem, and it still happens. At least I made it. But what happened was my grade point average, and I knew what everything it took to get in med school. I knew what it was going to take. So after that first semester, for me anyway, I knew that dream was over. And that was devastating. That changed that period of time for my life. I get a little emotional about it because I was lost. I was just, it was the only thing I knew. It was the only perspective that I have of myself. That even my schoolmates growing up knew me as the kid, oh, Dean, he's going to be a doctor, you know, and and after one semester, that was over. And I floundered. I floundered in college for 4 years. You know, one thing my dad was pretty tough. He retired. He was in the Navy. He was a hard worker, and he said, you got 4 years. And after that, it's the military or a job for you. And so I did everything I could while I floundered and majored in every single major offered by the College of Science. At one time, I switched my major 3 times in one day. So I got to know Dr. Hanrahan, my advisor, very well. And thank goodness for him, because I was so fortunate. I actually did this on my Facebook page back some months ago, where I recognized all the mentors, all the people that every time I fell, somebody was there to help me. And partly, I think partly is my personality. I was open to that too. I was open to talking to people and listening to their advice. And again, that goes back to my family, my grandparents. But he's the only reason I made it. He's the only reason I made it. So I ended up with I think I have 3 different minors and then a major. And I made it. I got out. Still no idea what I wanted to do with my life. A friend of mine that was on the basketball team got me a job digging ditches and working construction with a college degree, had a college degree, digging ditches, working construction. But that construction owner then became a mentor. He taught me, again, reiterated in me the value of hard work, supported me. My parents moved again while I was in college, so I had no connection to the city that they moved to. So I basically moved out on my own at 18 and never went back. So when I got out of college, he kind of became another surrogate adult, another parent in my life. So for a year, he took me under his wing and acted like a father figure. And I never forget, the motor on my car blew up, and he helped me change out the motor. He did a lot for me. His name was Michael Freeman, again, never forget. And even he was one that said, you know what, Dean, it's probably time you start thinking about putting your degree to use, doing something else with your life. You know, and my dad had been on me about maybe you should go into, he worked for State Farm Insurance. My dad was like, maybe you ought to give State Farm and a young kid. I'm like, insurance? Are you kidding? No. Well, after a year of digging ditches and my boss saying, you know what, you got to do more with yourself, I realized my dad wasn't so stupid. As we all learn, our parents are pretty smart. And I interviewed with State Farm, and I got a job with State Farm Insurance. And that was 35 years ago this past May. You know, they're a Fortune 100 company. And one thing I love about State Farm is that they don't farm out activities. They don't contract out human resources, accounting, marketing, education. They do everything internal. So even though I've worked with one company my entire life, I have probably done 7 or 8 different careers, different jobs. I've been a trainer. I've been an executive. I've been an executive assistant. I've been a claims person. I've been a catastrophe planner. I've been on catastrophe duty. I have supervised catastrophe in our reaction to catastrophes. I have worked in marketing. I have worked in lobbying. Then I was given the opportunity to own my own business as a State Farm agent, selling insurance and financial services. So I am so blessed. I'm like the guy who, you know, falls into horse manure and finds a pony. I mean, I've just been very lucky in my life. So in turn, I've become committed to sharing some of that luck, and doing what all of my mentors did for me, is keeping people positive, showing them that the sky is the limit. The sky is the limit if you surround yourself with the right people and the right mentors. And here I go. I could go and go and go, but I've just been very fortunate. And then to come to Frederick, where it's just such a great community and such an opportunity to get involved in the community. My wife is a motivator for me as far as getting involved in the community. She worked at Washington County Public Schools. She subbed in Frederick County Public Schools. She got me involved with Hartley House, volunteering there. We volunteered for the Make-A-Wish Foundation, which is incredibly rewarding. I now volunteer on the Special Gifts Committee at the hospital. It's been a very important role here recently with putting together all the donations and everything that the community has been so generous with. But more recently, about 5 years ago, I was approached about joining the Boys and Girls Club of Frederick County, which I just think is an amazing organization. The reason they came to me is that I was an assistant varsity basketball coach in FCPS. I coached for 4 years at Urbana and ultimately 9 years at Oakdale. So they knew my commitment to mentoring young men and just how much I love the community. So they approached me about joining their board, and I jumped at the chance. I was excited to do it. It's a great organization, and I happen to know that we have a connection with you at Ballinger Creek Middle School. So Wayne Toms is a great staff member for us and did some work at the middle school. But anyway, I got involved with them, and just I love it. I love it. I love the commitment. I love the organization. What their mission is supporting at-risk youth and children who need us most. Then almost about 2 years ago, I got elevated as board chair, and just have been extremely active we have a great executive director. We have a great staff. I'm just so excited to work with that organization. And then it's also exposed to me so many generous organizations within our community, like the Community Foundation, the Osherman Foundation, Marlene Young at the Delaplane Foundation. I mean, there are just some amazing people in this community that I've had the opportunity to get to know and interact with, and they are so generous with both their time and their money, and they want to do better for our community. They really want Frederick to be that kind of community, and so that's who I am. I'm
wow.
passionate,
Wow. Wow. What
So,
an amazing introduction for an amazing man. We just crossed paths via Facebook. I invited him on the show to be a speaker. He jumped at the chance to be here. And I am so blessed and fortunate to have had the time to sit down with you today. What an amazing journey. What an amazing story. Thank you for sharing so much of your story, because I made so many connections that I am going to share about. First of all, I was just on a call yesterday in West Virginia. I have a good friend who served as the hostess in my wedding, Nisha Poor, who is the director, I believe, I might be messing up her title, at West Virginia University. She just did a forum yesterday. She led a summit called Race Matters, along with the mayor of West Virginia. I had a colleague, Greg Young, who used to live in West Virginia when I was at Roberto Clemente Middle School in Montgomery County Public Schools, and talk about restorative leadership. He used to host at his house for the whole leadership team to come to his house and play cards and things like that. And he just, he commuted from West Virginia, and he was the best science teacher. He was my mentor as a science teacher when I served as a teacher. And so I just, so many connections to West Virginia. Thank you for sharing that history of West Virginia. You shared earlier that, high school for you, you just saw for the first time diversity, I think it was, right? And for me, I think Howard University was the first experience for me to be around all African Americans, because I grew up the opposite. I grew up around all mainly whites, students of, it was a diverse environment a lot. Charlemont Elementary plus Music Magnet School, and then Philadelphia High School for Girls. It was, magnet, it was advanced. My mother always had me challenged, similar to what you spoke about later in life. And it's really important. I think, hearing your story of transitioning to 3 different elementary schools, I feel for my daughter. My daughter was the daughter of a administrator who was a single mom who, whenever I moved schools, as we're hired to our positions and not to our schools, we can't get comfortable anywhere as people who are, parents like me. I'm a parent of 5 through my, my marriage, 3 stepchildren and 2 biological children. So you get to see, school on both ways, working for the county and then being a parent. You get to see kind of the system in different perspectives. And, my daughter, unfortunately, when I was an administrator in Montgomery County, she went to at least 3 or 4 middle schools, because every time I got a new position at a different school, I moved apartments or houses so that I could be close to work, because I'm a workaholic, unfortunately. I believe family first, but I'm always working. Like, my mind just doesn't stop. That's just who I was raised to be, a leader by natural. I liked hearing you say about the homeless and the Alice Report population, our most vulnerable population. I work next to Carrie Ann Henson, who does a lot with SHIP. Shout out to Ed Hind and Mary Lynn Hind of SHIP. They are phenomenal leaders, and thank you for mentioning that. We do care a lot about our most vulnerable population, especially right now. It's definitely something that's on my mind. I liked hearing you say also re-examine your circle. Jeneen C.A.R.E.S is caring for our students, caring, achieving, restoring, empowering our youth for the future. So when I heard you say re-examine your circle, that's so important to our students who, for the most part, a lot of them live through social media, and so sometimes their circle becomes people that they admire based off of social media, but that can't be the case. We have to really know people, and trust does not overnight. That trust comes with actions. And when you said something to the fact of, making sure they're lifting you up and empowering you, not bringing you down. I love that quote. Pulling you up and not pulling you down is your exact quote. And I love to hear you say, do as I say. I remember my mom saying that as a child. She was like, Jeneen, you listen to what I say. Don't listen to what I do. And that's the same thing for me. I have 2 children. My first marriage was actually with my current husband. I didn't get married right away because I had so many trust issues, and I had so many relationships that I just, wasn't successful in. And so my first marriage was recent. And so I just celebrated an anniversary, obviously August the 4th, honestly. But, I'm in a state of transition right now, and I really appreciated you saying, do as I say and not as I do. And I believe that for my daughter. I've always encouraged her, sometimes, Cherie, I'm a non-example. I'm not always the example. Educationally, I got it all put together. But in my personal life, I'm sometimes a work in progress. And I keep God first, and I keep family first. And academically, I'm very, very intelligent. Like you said, we share the biology. I was an undergrad in biology major. So hearing you in the science, you talked about, med school. For me, I just am not a good test taker. The only test that I aced, really quickly was the test for the admin principalship. I literally got hired as the principal in Frederick County Public Schools, and they were waiting on my scores. And thank God they were, I passed with like flying colors the first time around. And so, but the science test, not so much. So I didn't go to medical school because of that.
Well, lucky us.
Yeah.
Lucky us who aced that test.
I appreciate
We're glad to have you here.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It's, 20 years in education. It's a hard journey. This is my 21st year in education, and I'm blessed and fortunate to still be, in education, and I love it passionately. Working in student services, I get to see the counselors, the therapists, the behavior support specialists, those people that I relied on a lot in the school. Those are our true first responders. You can see my son in the background who knows.
Hey.
Okay, thank you.
Well, that. I mean, I took a look at your resume, obviously, before we were doing this. And again, that's what I'm so impressed with by the people in this community that do so much for our community that, you look at your resume, you could do anything. You could, but you chose education and to be a mentor to young people. And I'm always so impressed. I'm so impressed with so many people I've met through this journey of running for the Board of Education. I've really made it a commitment. I am an outgoing person, so I made it a commitment. Thank goodness. I was very quick prior to the pandemic. I visited with a lot of teachers, administrators, visited as many schools as I could, and just so impressed with so many people's backgrounds and their commitment and passion for children.
Absolutely. We have a lot of great teachers, a lot of great administrators. It's a time of transition, though. We have also lost a few. I know Patty Barnes at West Frederick Middle School just transitioned to a new county, and she's my sorority sister. I'm going to miss her because it's nothing like collaboration with people that personally and professionally. I'm always looking to be mentored. You mentioned that. I love to hear you say mentoring. That's what Jeneen C.A.R.E.S is all about. It's about the fact that, in every school that I've served in, I've always had a mentoring program, Girls with Pearls and Guys with Ties. And because, COVID doesn't allow us to be one-on-one with students, I said, I'm going to take this show online. And so Jeneen C.A.R.E.S was literally birthed out of the fact that I wanted to continue mentoring our youth. And so your interview is, to me, community service, where you are still allowing the youth to hear from you. I would have invited you to my school if I was at a principal level, right? To have you speak because of your resume, but you just shared with us. That would have been phenomenal for my mentoring program to hear, the hurdles that you overcame. And so that is the reason why I do Jeneen C.A.R.E.S. It's not about me. The title is a little misleading, but it really is caring, achieving, restoring, empowering our support for the youth, for the future. And it is about our youth. And so interesting fact that you shared, 25% of our college freshmen don't continue. That's hard to hear.
Yeah. And if you think about too, sometimes in our educational system where we try to, and this was kind of a little bit of a failure when they went through the No Child Left Behind.
Right.
They forced kids to college, or they forced kids, they were asking high school kids, what do you want to be? And I look at that of my life, that I was so focused on only one thing. I was so focused on becoming a doctor.
Right.
That when that didn't happen, I lost my way. And what we find out is more than 50%, now 25% don't even come back for their sophomore year.
Wow.
Another 50% change their major.
Wow.
They don't end up becoming what they thought they were going to become when they graduate from high school. So we need to prepare kids to be flexible,
yes.
to be nimble, to be prepared to take on different roles, different challenges, to open up their minds. That's what I love about what we're trying to do now at the high school level is
Mhm.
expose our kids to more options,
Yeah, the
not
link
just
program at Frederick.
reading,
Nice.
reading, writing, and arithmetic.
Right.
They have to be exposed to so many options, and it doesn't need to be a culture shock when you get to college where you weren't exposed to marketing and finance until you got to college.
Right.
You get exposed to that earlier to see that you might have multiple interests.
Right.
Because that's important when you get to college. You might say, yep, I want to be an accountant.
Right.
But then you get to college and something builds upon something you learned in high school. That maybe I'd like to be in marketing, or maybe I'd like to be in public service, or
Right.
maybe I'd like to be an attorney. I mean, there's so much, and I just love the programs that we're beginning to develop in FCPS and many of our school districts where we're exposing our kids. And I want to expose like CTC.
I was getting ready to mention CTC and the links program
Amazing.
at High School.
Amazing.
Those are amazing.
Links.
Yes.
Links at Frederick High.
Yes.
Exposing kids to opportunities that they might have never been exposed to. I mean, you know, what I found out when I had the opportunity, thank goodness, I think it was the Wednesday before the shutdown, I got to spend half a day at CTC.
Nice.
Shout out to them
there.
for allowing me to, you know, come in and tour that program.
Yes.
And we have got to build that program up. We can't sometimes we've looked down on that because of our perception of, oh, that's shop class or that's home ec, but there are some amazing, there are 55 programs in there.
They've come to balance. It's been amazing.
Yes.
Yes.
And the majority of those kids, some go on to careers right away, but the majority of those kids go on to college.
Which is amazing.
And build upon what they learn.
It's the best of both worlds. College and career readiness is what we're developing in Frederick County Public.
And that's why I love CTC and links.
I want to shout out Mr. Concepcion, who's an amazing principal, and his wife. Congratulations, Miss Concepcion, on your recent retirement. Thank you for your commitment, your dedication to Frederick County Public Schools. You were like one of my role models, Miss Concepcion, so we will miss you in retirement.
She was amazing. She happened to have been my daughter's middle school principal.
Yes.
And she actually helped us a lot with some challenges that my daughter faced in middle school.
Nice.
She was amazing.
Yes, she was. She was definitely somebody that when I first came into the county, I was like, I need her as my mentor. And
she's great.
There's been so many other hers, like, you know, Dr. Linda Chambers inspires me daily, not daily, but often, that we will not have any all but dissertations in FCPS. And so I've got to finish my doctorate journey that I'm on right now. And so mentoring matters. Dr. Chambers, thank you for your legacy leadership as well. I hope to get you on. And speaking of mentors, I'm in a day 5 of a training for racial equity and social justice with one of my mentors, Dr. Sean Joseph, who served as the first African-American head of schools in Nashville, Tennessee, among other places. And so mentoring matters to me. I want to thank Dr. Malker, who was my principal prior to coming to Frederick County Public Schools. So he was my last principal, and he was a legacy leader. He was definitely one who challenged everyone to speak their truths and to lead for equity with documentation when needed. And sometimes you need an extra push to say, here's the data. How can we support you? Have those restorative, courageous conversations that are sometimes not comfortable. But with restorative practices, what we do is we allow that safe space for courageous conversations to happen. And in my post observations with teachers, I don't care if you were a mediocre teacher or a stellar teacher, the level of respect always remained the same, because to be an educator, as you shared earlier, it's difficult, and so we can't, because, some people may not be skilled as to meet the needs of some of our students who come in with trauma. They're still valuable teachers, and we have to make sure that they are valued as much as a teacher who comes in naturally doing it, right? And so that is important to me. I graduated at 16. You graduated at 18. Wow. And then to be on the State Farm journey, I think I got on my academic journey or teaching journey because of Dr. Daka, who saw at Argyle Middle School that I had a heart for children. I had no training, like you mentioned. I had a biology degree in education, and so Montgomery County allowed me to have a conditional certification, which I think, Frederick County does that as well. We allow teachers who are skilled resume-wise, who may be, second starters, to come over because they have the heart for children. We need to keep the people, right?
Yep. Because they've got the passion for it. I met several teachers like that teaching was a second career for them.
Absolutely.
And I think that's an avenue. When we talk about building diversity within our teaching ranks, that's an area we really should focus on as well.
Yes.
Because there is such a small pool of diverse candidates now coming out of college, because we have a national problem with teachers.
Thank you for saying that.
We have got to attack people of color who it's going to be a second career for them, that they already have a passion for children. They'd love to teach and get involved.
Yes.
Or people we need to go out to other areas and recruit established teachers. I mean, because for me, that's one of our top priorities, is that we have got to build diversity within our teaching ranks. Our diverse population. I mean, you think about our Hispanic, Latinx, and African-American communities. They have got to be exposed of people who look like them. And there are study after study that show that those are ignition points for kids. Ignition points for kids are being exposed to people like yourself and having the opportunity to be mentored with shared experiences and people who look like them. And that's I highlighted that when I read Every Student Succeeds Act. And that study was in there. And I was like,
yes,
why aren't we making that focus number one? If we want to lift kids up, if we want to give children of color opportunity, why shouldn't we make that a commitment number one, both financially and in recruitment, that we need to bring those type of people into our school systems so that they can mentor these people and make our systems more equitable by raising these people up. Like I talked about, make sure your circle is raising you up and not pulling you down. We need teachers who are able to associate with our kids and pull them up. And I talk like, I always tell people I don't go to formal education. I haven't built my formal education, but I love TED Talks. I love to. I was laughing with my wife this morning.
You should do one. You really should do one.
I love to. I call it reading, but I have a little bit of ADD. I will be reading 3 books at once. I'll be bouncing back and forth and folding back pages and reading 3 books at once and getting ideas from them and things like that. And one of the ones I just stumbled across recently, the guy outlined what he thought were 3 keys to raising students' achievement and equity. One, and the first happens without any, is ignition. Ignition is when people see other people like them doing great things, and that ignites, I can do this. I can do that too. But then it's our responsibility to then create an environment for those children to excel, which is welcoming, positive, and filled with positive cues. It continues to build on that theme of, I can do this. I can do this. Then we have to continually add fuel to the fire. And that's with leaders, mentors, teachers, community leaders, bringing people into classrooms to talk to them so that we're continually reinforcing what originally ignited them to do it. And this gentleman, his name is Daniel Coyle, and he wrote a book that I just finished reading called The Talent Code. And he said that he quoted successful person after successful person that saw an ignition point that I can do this. They look like me. They came from a similar background as me. And then they were exposed to an environment that allowed them to flourish and fuel. He said, but if you remove any 3 of those steps, you set yourself up for failure. So, and I know this is a hard conversation sometimes. I use the example of finally having our first Black president, Barack Obama. That's ignition. That's an ignition point to so many of our children of color across our country.
It definitely was. Children and adults. I mean, for me, it was very inspirational. I mean, we cried, you know?
Absolutely. So our job now is to give those children the environment to build upon that ignition point that they saw. Then all children, we always talk about kids, in kindergarten say, well, what do you want to do when you grow up? I'd like to be president of the United States. Well, yeah, you could. An immigrant, an immigrant father, I mean, an amazing story. So that's an ignition point. Well, then it's our job to create environments for those kids to be able to achieve those dreams and then continue to fuel them. And it really, when I read that in that book, I was like, wow, that really just struck me.
I mean, and I'm thinking about,
of what you're trying to do, what your platform is trying to do. Because I'm humbled to be on here because when I find out I have such a great opportunity, I was so excited by your platform. And I think you had Damar on from at Virtual Reality at VR.
Yes.
He's working with us with the C.A.R.E.S of Frederick, providing virtual reality goggles, and because the C.A.R.E.S of Frederick supports the Boys and Girls Club. It's our #1 fundraiser.
Yeah.
I mean, what an amazing individual, an amazing talk you had with him.
Yeah.
Adrian, the photographer that worked with the march.
Yes.
The conversation you had with, what was it? Is it Don Milner?
Yes.
I mean, amazing. Xavier Bruce.
Yes.
So I kind of treated your platform as a bunch of great TED Talks.
Yes.
Because I look at it like those are fuel and environmental and ignition people that we need to get into our schools.
Absolutely.
I don't mean to sound like I'm kissing up, but I believe you have conversations on your platform that should be required viewing.
Wow,
for some of our students.
I like
because
that.
they can see
one of our
achievement.
board members.
I mean, they get to see the achievement, and I really appreciate the fact that you really focused the last couple of months through COVID. You focused on Black-owned entrepreneurs and business people, and I just think that's so important, because if we want to truly create equity within our school system, we have got to continue to push that lens to people that you can be successful, that we're behind you. And I again, sounds like I'm sucking up.
You know what? Thank you so much for all that you're saying. I will have to say that I know, and you haven't mentioned it, but you are running for a seat on the Board of Education. Is that correct?
I am.
You know what? You have my vote because this conversation has been absolutely amazing. And I've been following you for a while as well, because I like to do my homework. I'm a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. And so I just don't connect with anyone. I just don't bring anyone on the show. So I do my research as well to find out, who these people are and how they could be deemed a legacy leader. And so you're volunteering at the Boys and Girls Club. You're being a board member there, right? And I have never been on a board. Now, yesterday on my birthday, I turned 44 yesterday. I signed and paid for Jeneen C.A.R.E.S to officially be a nonprofit. So I'm waiting for that thing to go for it. Thank you. I am so excited about that. And I just want to continue serving, but I really want to get on a board. I was thinking about either the Mental Health Association, because I believe in mental health, or like a Boys and Girls or YMCA or something like that. Either way.
We need you. We need you on our board, because also you know the impact. You were a principal at Ballinger Creek Middle School when we brought a program there in its very infancy. I mean,
and then it grew, it exploded.
And it grew. And that's an area of one of my commitments as a board member of the Boys and Girls Club, is to grow that middle school, because I believe middle schoolers are such a missed opportunity where we can impact young men and young women, as they're changing so much, when they're in middle school. There's so much going on with their mental, emotional
conversation when they said, can we have the Boys and Girls Club? So I did my research. I remembered myself growing up. I went to the YMCA as a child. It was an opportunity for me to be off the streets of Philadelphia and with people who would be mentoring, protecting, helping me with homework, as my mom was a single parent. And so when they said, can they come to your school? I was like, absolutely, please have them come in. I have children who, need to be here with me rather than on the streets of Frederick, right? And
Yep.
so, that reminds me, I just recently saw a student who I worked so hard with in the news for making a poor choice. And so it's those moments for a principal that you just say, man, I wish I could have said one more thing, connected them to the Boys and Girls Club or something, that parent, that family situation, is always sometimes, a reason that can give a principal that, aha, this is going to be something you got to focus on, because that support structure is so important at home. We know that.
Yeah, that's why we're working so hard at the Boys and Girls Club about collaboration.
Yes.
With our fellow providers, because there are some amazing student-focused organizations within our community. I Believe in Me, the Police Activities League.
I love that group. He tried to come to my school too. I think the timing just wasn't right at that time, but now he's doing great things. Yeah.
So we're actually gonna collaborate with Ajay on some issues as we're working through the COVID world.
Brandon,
and as well as the City Youth Matrix with Aaron Vetter.
Yeah,
we're really trying to collaborate with those folks. So I was talking to Ajay. I stopped by and helped out at one of his food drives the other day, and he just said it. He said, we are stronger together, and we can't get caught up in our little silos that, it's I believe in me, and SHIP too. We've talked to Ed. We want to collaborate. And because we're stronger together, and we're going to be able to provide more and more services to the children who need us most. And I find it so interesting that we have an interesting background in that when I moved my last time, I moved in the middle of my sophomore year of high school, which was an unbelievably difficult time. And I can't imagine. I'm not afraid to admit I was bullied. I was an outsider. I had a difficult time, but this is because my parents could afford to join the Y. So I had a place to go. I had a place to go after school where I could belong, and again interact with. I played pickup basketball with adults. So I got to interact with adults. I got to interact with working out with other children of color. And really built the way I thought. And the Y got me through that period of time. I ended up enrolling in a karate class, all kinds of, then I just had so many mentors, but then that's what intrigued me about the Boys and Girls Club is we have such a tremendous Y program here in our county, but then there's also all of those children that unfortunately can't afford to take advantage of those services.
Absolutely.
The Y tries very hard to scholarship and provide, but they can't do it for everybody. And the Boys and Girls Club, I Believe in Me, the Housing Authority, the City Youth Matrix are all organizations that really try to reach out to those ALICE kids, to the kids with the adverse childhood experiences. I mean, I just think about, we've learned so much about, we've learned so much about our folks who have come back from war and PTSD. And now we're finally applying that to our children who are going through so many difficult times. And you talked about this. This is a key point of restorative practices, of the adverse childhood experiences, the post-traumatic stress that these children have experienced,
and adults,
and then they bring it to school every day. And then it's just the way we were raised, but then we exacerbated it with our punishment theory, that we're going to punish it out of you. You know what? You were bad, you're going to get punished. Instead of let's fix it. Let's fix the issue. Let's find out what is at the root of the issue. And kudos to you, because now we're in the educating those that are applying these practices, because we got to get buy-in from every teacher, every administrator, and from our community. Because the first thing that flashes is people are like, oh, now you're just trying to take discipline away. You're not going to discipline kids.
That's not why I said it's been a journey. It's been a journey. And I'll say, let me brag first on FCPS, and then I'll speak to the journey and the areas of growth. We have trained, under in the Department of Student Services, my boss, my supervisor, Dana Falls, had the visionary leadership to say, let's start with our own. Let's start with our counselors, our therapists, our because we didn't require a sub for those positions. So I gave all of them, almost 200 people have been trained in a 2-day training through the International Institute of Restorative Practices, because I'm a licensed trainer for them. And so I've trained 200 of our student services, our administrators, our counselors. So we are ready for this 2021 school year, which we could not have predicted COVID, right? But we have predicted the fact that social emotional learning is something that we need to take care of. So we are prepared. I am next week going to be sending out resources to every school in Frederick County. I have posters, I have cards, I have books, I have professional learnings designed to have an option of restorative practices in every single building. And I am proud to say that, a lot of the volunteer administrators came with their whole leadership team to training. Walkersville Elementary School, I'm working with that school now to plan a book study, a summer book study. So people are ignited about this restorative practices journey. But, the flip side is what you said, the whole prisoner pipeline, philosophy, and the fact that some people still have that punitive mindset. You mess up, instead of separating the deed from the doer and saying, look, I know you, like any other human, made a mistake, right? Especially an adolescent learner, a child, for goodness sakes, who can't really make decisions appropriately until they're like, beyond adult. So, we have to forgive, we have to separate the deed from the doer, and to ensure that everybody gets a fair trial, right? And so when we engage in those restorative conversations, we're allowing, one, accountability. I am still going to be high expectations. You are going to have a consequence, believe me. And sometimes that consequence might be a suspension, but it's going to be combined with some kind of restorative opportunity, volunteer, that allows you to right the wrong, hold yourself accountable, right? And to really change the behavior, because we don't want to see a repetition of what's already occurring. We want to make sure there is a teachable moment, right? And I'm actually going to be having this conversation on one of a talk show, Black in the Days, later on this evening. Actually, I'm being interviewed for a podcast, and I'm also at 10:30. So I'm going to have to wrap up this interview. I'm going to have to have you back on the show again soon. For a parent teacher, Donovan Blake, Dr. Donovan Blake. She just got her doctorate, and she is interviewing me about just the parent, being a parent, right, at 10:30. So I want to thank you so much for your time. I want to get to our restorative questions, but keep in mind that I have to finish by about 10:15. And so let's maybe give me your first, 3 or 4 thoughts about.
I'll give you a quick try. I'll try to give you a quick thought.
I know you'll try. And we could probably talk for hours. And by the way, I've been looking for a mentor in the Frederick community, and I think you might be it. I think you might be my next mentor.
Oh my goodness.
Okay. So anyway, next question is, since March 13th, I know where I was. I was at Lincoln Elementary School. Hillcrest, sorry. I was at Hillcrest Elementary doing a professional learning on, so shout out to Carl Williams, the principal at Hillcrest, on restorative practices. And he was, doing another leadership team meeting and preparing for COVID, right, announcement. Amber Madigan came out, she gave the announcement, and she pretty much, told teachers that we're going to be on quarantine for 2 weeks. And 2 weeks turned into, we're still there, right? And so what's been on your mind? What's been on your mind? Where were you and what's been on your mind?
Well, I was kind of I was in the middle of this Board of Education campaign, and my commitment in preparation was visiting with as many, and I think I mentioned that Wednesday I toured CTC. I actually had an appointment to visit Lincoln Elementary School, I think was going to be that Monday. So I was kind of in conversation with Principal Eric Rhodes about our visit.
Phenomenal leader. Shout out. He's
phenomenal.
My care over content quote. I got that from him. Care over content. Keep going.
Yep. So I was in contact with him, and the moment it happened, we're like, oh no, we've got to cancel. I'm not going to get to do that visit. And I think if you're a family member, your first thought is for your family, the safety of your family. That's the first thing that crosses your mind. I tell everybody that it's what we don't know about the coronavirus that's the frightening thing. And the fact, I always tell people, us having a science background, the key word is novel, the novel coronavirus. And we know so little about it. So my fears for my family were first, but then my immediate, and I lost enormous amounts of sleep over this, were the Boys and Girls Club, because that's one of my primary focuses is, where do we go from here? What do we do? So I was on the phone with our executive director almost immediately, and our board. We got our board together. We got our executive director together. We formulated a plan immediately. I mean, I'm so proud of our board and our executive director in that, and a lot of organizations stepped up. But we were the very first organization in Frederick County to reach out to MSDE and offer our services as a provider of care for children of essential workers and first responders.
That
on
is
Sunday,
awesome.
on Sunday, I was on the phone with Stephen Hicks, who is the Assistant State Superintendent of Schools, on a Sunday, because so much was going on. So we were on the phone with him, myself, the executive director of the Boys and Girls Club. We're on the phone with Stephen, just, how are we going to do this? What do we need to do? Then we connected with the rest of our Boys and Girls Club facilities within the state of Maryland to collaborate and figure out, how are we going to attack this? How are we going to provide services now to an even another group of kids who need us most? And what can we do for them within the guidelines of CDC and MSDE? And so we spent that entire 2 weeks. We probably talked to Stephen Hicks 20 times. I mean, just working it out. Conference calls. Once other organizations stepped in, like the Y and some of the other daycare providers, we were on conference calls. And so that was my immediate reaction. Like I said, the safety of my family. But then what are we going to do with how will we evolve? How will the Boys and Girls Club evolve? And then we looked into the funding vehicles. And again, I have to just tout so many organizations within our community that stepped up and helped us. And then our board was just so active. We have just, great diversity of thought and experiences on our board that helped us think this through. So that was my first. That was my first.
Thank you for that. I share in your kind of initial thoughts. My son, because I'm an administrator and my husband is employed, YMCA is where my son goes. And so he was doing the YMCA after school. And so I'm still paying for YMCA, even though he's not going. I think they canceled the actual, aftercare, but I'm still paying for the gym membership. At any rate, I share in that, family first. And honestly, my son had a COVID exposure because his father had COVID. We lost a bison at Howard who was a pharmacist, passed away as a result of serving continuously. He owned his own, I think, pharmacy. And so he passed away. That was our first loss at Howard of a bison to COVID. And so all those things are on my mind. What has been the hardest thing for you? What's been the hardest thing for you since quarantine?
Well, I guess just the isolation, because I am an outgoing person, and
Yeah.
Wow, have I grabbed onto this Zoom thing?
Yeah.
I love Zoom. I'm okay with all the Zoom meetings you want to have. I will interact and interview and talk to anybody who wants to talk to me, because I enjoy the interaction. Then you talked about it, is, again, it goes back to family.
Yeah.
I mean, my wife works at Frederick Health. She's the vice president of development, but she had to pivot. They asked her to pivot to then be like in charge of of all the items that were coming in, the PPE donations, the folks that stepped up and handmade masks, and then all the food that started coming in to our first responders. So she took charge of that. Her department pivoted from fundraising to accumulation and distribution of all the donations that were coming in to Frederick Health. But in essence, then she was constantly exposed to potential COVID threats. Well, then also my daughter, who we always laugh, she graduated with a degree from the University of South Carolina in public health, but then she decided she wanted to be a nurse. So she came back home and she got accepted into the nursing program at the University of Maryland. And so in the meantime, she also works at FMH.
Oh man.
She works in the NICU unit at FMH. So I'm constantly concerned about her.
Yeah,
she was exposed and had to get tested and quarantined for a few days until her test fortunately came back very quickly and she was negative. But that's on your mind because she works midnights. She works 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. 3 or 4 days a week in addition to her schooling. She's amazing. But my concerns about that, of course, our son is 26 and out on his own, but he lives in South Carolina, which has been a hot spot. So that's your first thought.
They have concerns. Yeah.
So that's what you're constantly, that's your worry. And then I was really proud of yesterday on her podcast, Michelle Obama came out.
Yes,
and said,
my mom shared
Michelle Obama, I am suffering from low-grade depression. Something we're all facing. We all need to talk about. We need to reach out. And I just thought, good for her. I mean, again, we all have to expose our weaknesses and our faults so kids understand, and adults, that failure is part of life. And where you go from there is what makes you.
Yeah, I'm working with Dr. Max. She is my therapist right now. I mean, it's one of those things when you're going through transitions or everybody is experiencing secondary trauma because of COVID, everybody. And so right now, you all have a pass to have a therapist right now. Trust me, okay? So nobody is exempt from the opportunity to see a therapist during this time because we're all grieving. We're grieving restrictions. We're grieving, seeing people dying, whether it's Black Lives Matters or COVID-19. It's just, this is an unprecedented time in our life. And you mentioned MSDE. I had the best call, speaking of virtual calls, with MSDE, and we were just talking about, sharing. It was a collaboration of all the schools. One of the things that other duties as assigned is I'm a neediest kids rep. And so I get the pleasure and opportunity to work with SHIP and other community organizations. Neediest Kids is one of them, where I get all the donations that come into our system and I give them out to our community liaisons and things like that. And so that is one of the calls that are most memorable during this quarantine time, where I got to see Carroll County, Montgomery County, PG County, and hear what every county was doing on an MSDE call with regards to preparing for reopening and managing the closing, being virtual. And so that was an empowering call. And so the next question, how do you remain positive? Because right now I just see so much positive energy, but yet you have so much that's going on, and that could be like triggers for worry about your children, worried about your wife. Like, how do you remain positive?
I guess partly because I've been so lucky. I just have a very positive outlook and a positive personality. And we talked about circles. I surround myself with positive individuals. Through coaching, I've been so lucky to have worked with so many amazing coaches. Terry Connolly is a huge mentor. He's a mentor to me because he brought me on the coaching staff at Urbana. He believes in mentoring young men. I mean, he believes in structure and discipline and love. He probably wouldn't want me to say that because he's a big bear. But, but they know that he cares about them, so that when he provides the restorative practices, the consequences, and the discipline, they know it's out of a place of caring. And so he's a huge mentor of mine. So staying in contact with those people, my family, my work with the Boys and Girls Club, seeing what we're able to control and what we're able to impact and the impact of others, seeing what Ajay is doing in our community, seeing what others are doing in our community, staying in contact with people like that, understanding, continuing to have conversations and meet with my wife to talk about all the good that's going on in our community during this period. And I think you've mentioned it before, is control what we can control.
Absolutely.
And be the best human we can be and share that.
Yeah, we talked here about how we both feel that, in a time of, what matters, everybody matters, right? Everybody in their own right matters. Black lives matters. LGBTQ lives matters. All lives matters. given the incidents that are going on in our community. And so we all need to understand, and you can speak to this a little bit, when we need to support each other. And like you said earlier, my thing is one community together strong. What's your thought?
Oh, absolutely. And we kind of talked about before we started about the whole Black Lives Matter and somebody, and sometimes in a derogatory manner, they'll fire back the all lives matter.
Right.
But we have to remember that all lives don't matter unless they all do.
Right.
Black lives matter, LGBTQ lives matter. And so we cannot diminish that movement of people saying, here's what needs to happen. And I had a conversation with somebody the other day. When you think about, it's been 76 years since Brown versus the Board of Education. And we still have so far to go in equity among our school systems. And you think about in 76 years, and we still have a long way to go, but this is it. We talked about ignition points. This is it. Now we have to fuel it and continue to build the environment where we have good conversations. We have to provide the fuel to have solid conversations, not push anybody away, bring people into the conversation and talk about what's happening in our communities and how this is going to strengthen all of our communities, all of our lives. And I talk about this a lot as far as the investment in education. We need to get away from that this is some sort of expense. This is an investment in lives. Mm-hmm. Every dollar, there are studies all over the place, but I like to use the one for every dollar we spend on public education, $17 is returned to the community. Mm. So it's an investment. Would we rather spend, and we underspend in this county, we're 23rd out of 24, but would we rather spend $14,000 a year on a student? And we talk about the school to prison pipeline. So $14,000 a year on a student, or would we rather spend $40,000 a year to house them in a penitentiary? Mm. That's we got to flip that. Mm-hmm. We have to flip that narrative that and that's what restorative practices is about. That's what social and emotional learning is about, is we've got to flip that narrative where we fund our schools to provide these services, and then we're saving so much money on the back end because it's so much easier, so much cheaper to teach a child versus fix an adult. So
absolutely. And you said flip the mask. I was in a training recently. I can't remember which one because I believe in professional learning. I started learning at the age of 2 when I learned Suzuki violin. So I'm always learning. And so every time I see a professional learning that's related to, my work or the charge of my work, there was one recently that said flip the narrative, but it used a mask, right? And so it talked about how we all have our own mask, right? I have the mask of being a single mom of 2 before getting married. I have the mask of, different things happening to me in life. And so, what if we all flipped our mask and led with our things that we don't want to share with people first so that people can make those connections with us? That's restorative practices. And so thank you for being, so real today. Thank you for this, courageous conversation. You mentioned, athletics. I love our athletic director in our county because I can still remember, something that he did where it was a track meet. My daughter ran track. She played field hockey. She's going to Hampton University. Shout out to all the class of 2020 graduates. We really pray for you all. We hope that, we know that you are going to be the visionary leaders because you were born near 9/11. The whole world was in shock. You are hating COVID, but you're loving TikTok. That's my little poem. Follow me on Instagram. You'll see, or on Jeneen C.A.R.E.S. You'll see a little bit of my rap rhymes too, because growing up, I was talking or listening to a social emotional learning episode of one of the professional learnings, and they talked about how, when people experience things, you have to have an outlet. And my outlet growing up in my house, I couldn't date anybody until I was 16. And so I didn't date until I was in college, literally. And so for me, my outlet was music. And so now to this day, I still write little rhymes and, change the word over as my outlet. I was going to mention earlier that, the life of a Black administrator anywhere Frederick County, Montgomery County, Durham Public Schools is not easy. We struggle as administrator because we don't always get to walk in without this face of being a Black woman, right? And so for me, that's been a journey. It's been a journey in every county that I've worked in. Some counties more successful at being supportive than others. And so I am so proud of us in Frederick County for having an ombudswoman, Sabrina Nail, who is, a person who people in our county currently, and they have one in Montgomery County as well, could go to if you're an administrator of color and you feel you need anything. There's that opportunity there. And we all have our story. We all have our masks that we wear. And I am on a new work committee in our county. It's a racial equity and social justice work group. It's not the one that Jay Mason is doing. It's a different.
Okay.
It's a different.
Another work group.
It's another one that's designed to help our district identify some professional learning opportunities that would be proposed to be required. So the question about whether or not Frederick County is doing racial inequity as a requirement versus as an option is being addressed in this work group that I'm on right now. And so I'm fortunate to be a part of that. We are creating a safe space for each of us to be able to speak our truths and then to collaborate. And so this work group is being led by Anne McGreevy, who's our head of psychology, and she's also the new president of the Mental Health Association.
Oh, wow. Fantastic.
Yes, and it's also being led by Eric Phillips, who's one of the equity representatives in our county. And so I'm proud to be a part of one of those subgroups, and we had our last meeting recently, and so I'm excited about that work that will be proposed as equity, racial and equity initiatives coming forth, hopefully to be shared with Jay Mason and his team, who's doing it with the community, and so that we will hopefully be able to see what will be happening with the district as a whole in terms of racial inequity and social justice being something that's kind of more required than optional. So last, I'm gonna give you 5 minutes. As a candidate for a board member seat, you have to have your elevator speech. So here it is. What is your elevator speech for parents and teachers? You have 5 minutes to address both parents and teachers in Frederick County.
Well, just the fact that, and you mentioned Sabrina. Sabrina came from the insurance industry.
Oh,
customer service focus, because a lot of people look at me and say, you're a businessman, maybe they don't focus on the coaching perspective that I have experienced with FCPS in that way, but a customer focused perception of serving people, of understanding who the customer is. And in our case, it's our students and our families are our customers, and we need to do the best for them. And then our teachers are our greatest resource. They are touching our customer every day. And we need to focus on that. So I want people to know really the 3 watchwords for me. And thank you. Shout out to the Frederick News Post. They have an article in the newspaper on me this morning, and I really appreciate that.
Very nice.
But my 3 words are commitment, passion, and experience. I'm committed to some culture change. I want to be an agent of change on the board. I want to be an advocate. So I'm committed to that I will always be prepared when I come to a board meeting, when I come to address a committee, when I come to address the public. I welcome your questions, your concerns, conversations. I'm committed to that. I like I talked about, if I get my head on something, I study it. Like I said, I love to read, study, investigate, keep an open mind. So I'm committed. Obviously, I'm passionate. I could talk to you for everybody I've had the good fortune to meet through this. They have to cut me off. I understand. I'm just very passionate about our young people and helping them navigate a very difficult world, as if we didn't need enough, that the COVID world and all the other things that we're transitioning through and helping our children. So I just really appreciate them. And then just experience. I feel like I have a breadth of experience with business, with coaching, mentoring, working with the Boys and Girls Club, working with the Make-A-Wish Foundation, working with Hartley House. I just feel like I've been very fortunate. I had mentors, and the best advice I can give to parents and mentors is don't be afraid to show the real you, that you failed, you picked yourself up, and your children and the children you're mentoring can do it too. So that's my speech.
Well, you did it in under, because you still have a minute left. So thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for this conversation. It was absolutely amazing. Please do not hesitate to reach out to me if you have a board member seat or something that I can be a part of to support Boys and Girls Club, because I do want to get that experience as I'm building my own board. I've already selected my board for this first round, but I'll be needing people to serve on my board as well. And so I'm excited about the opportunity to continue. I'm also hoping to get a part of the Rotary Club. It's something that I found interest in this county. I think that I've been invited to speak there at one of their meetings coming up soon about restorative practices. And so I'm excited about that opportunity.
That's awesome. I'm in the Rotary Club of Carroll Creek.
Very nice.
I just joined a few months ago. It's an amazing organization. So please join us.
Yeah,
and you can count on us reaching out regarding our board with the Boys and Girls.
Well, great. Well, thank you so much. Once again, it's Jeneen of Jeneen C.A.R.E.S. And I say I do support Dean Rose for the board member position, Jeneen of Jeneen C.A.R.E.S. Now, obviously, I'm Jeneen Stewart Beck, but as Jeneen of Jeneen C.A.R.E.S., a community member, a parent of 5 in Frederick County, I do support Mr. Rose. And thank you for your time today and your talent and your commitment to not just the students, but the community of Frederick. And I would end by, honoring your father of the Navy. At Ballinger Creek Middle School, we used to have a Veterans Day concert, and we used to hear all of the different, Wendy Schmidt, my music teacher, she used to play all of the songs. Can you hum the song? Do you know the Navy song? Because I don't really know which one it is, but I would say that would be a cool ending to this one.
That would be beyond me there.
Your dad probably knows it. You have to share that. You have to go on Facebook and share his the Navy song, because every branch of the service has their own song. I did not know that until she started playing it, and I don't know. I can hardly hum the Army one, and I'm sad. I should know it because my husband is 25 years Army, but I only heard it at his retirement ceremony, and so we got to both share those today. I'll share.
Yes, well, I love what Dr. Ed Scoder at Oakdale High School does for Veterans Day.
What does he do?
That event is amazing. So shout out to that.
Okay, yeah, and there's a lot of schools in our county who do amazing things. So shout out to Wendy Schmidt, who has all these songs. I was hoping that one of us could get one of the songs hummed, but neither one of us can right now. But we will share it on our YouTube or on our Facebook pages. So look forward to that. Thank you again for your time today, and have a wonderful afternoon and weekend actually. And I'll be in touch.
Thank you very much.
All right, take care. I'm going to end this call, and because I have to end the live feed as well. So have a good day and good weekend.
You too. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay, Timothy has to say goodbye. Signing off.
Oh, that's awesome.
Timothy,
you have a wonderful weekend, and thank you for joining us.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.